Good afternoon from sunny, I think, sunny-ish, southern England, Buckinghamshire here, and the lovely area of Exeter, in Elizabeth's case. You see some sunlight coming through to you.
Uh, Not a lot here. Not in
Oh,
the
bless.
southwest at the
No,
moment. So,
no. It's August. We should expect it to be nice.
yeah.
Anyway, apparently it's coming back to us. So we're here to talk about yourself and your writing. So we'll go back to the very beginning because I understand you
Okay.
you were a young writer. Can you remember the first thing you wrote and then your journey thereafter? Because you're very prolific in not just fiction, but I think you
Mm.
started with a non-fiction background, and then came to fiction.
I did. Well, even going back before that, the first thing I can remember writing was back when I was about 14. And I took part in a four-part competition in a Sunday newspaper where you had to write a story, a poem, crossword, and I've forgotten what fourth piece is.
Oh,
But the short story was appalling and cringeworthy.
oh dear.
The poem was probably worse, and my father, I found out years later, carried it around in his wallet for a long time. I hope he
Oh, how
didn't show
lovely.
any people.
How
And
lovely.
because of that, I won a 3-week trip to France, Spain, and Portugal,
Wow.
which I have to say at the age of 14 was totally wasted on me because I'd
Oh,
never been out of Birmingham. I'd never eaten anything other than very plain English food, and but it was an experience, and it sort of told me that I was going to be a writer, which is why I then took scientific qualifications and moved away from writing altogether. Um, but as a in my 30 odd years in the pharmaceutical manufacturing industry, I was obviously doing a lot of writing. I've always loved uh, nice sentences and working hard on having the prose right, etc. But for a long time, all I was writing was audit reports, training manuals, things like that. And then in the about 2000, year 2000, I was commissioned to write a textbook, and I wrote about 4 or 5 textbooks over the next sort of decade or so. But going back to what we're really talking about, which is the creative stuff, that started in 2006.
Mm.
Um, I've been traveling for 30 odd years, and I've had all sorts of experiences and all sorts of things that happened at different times. And people kept saying to me, "You really should write these down, you know." And I'd say, yeah, yeah, one of these days, one of these days.
Mm.
And then in 2005, I had a bit of a health scare and realized that one of these days is not right there in the future. It could well be
Mm.
quite short, quite
Mm.
close. So
Mm.
I started writing. I thought I was going to write memoir. I thought I was going to do travel writing, but I found that that didn't really work terribly well. But what I could do was take real events
Mm.
and put them in fictional settings. So I started writing short stories, and at the same time, I started writing my first novel, which took me best part of 8 years to finish.
Mm.
And I went from there.
Was there 8 year gap because life got in the way, or?
Well, I started it in 2006, I think it was, and by
Mm.
2010, I'd got 6 chapters written, and I'd
Mm.
written them and rewritten them and changed the order and moved them back and done all sorts of things. And I didn't know how to write a novel. You know,
Mm.
I was learning as I went along. So I signed up for an MA at Exeter University in
Mm.
creative writing, not because I wanted the qualification, but because I wanted the structure and the discipline to finish the work.
Mm.
And I sort of said to myself, if you haven't finished the novel by the time you finish the 2 year, because it was a part-time course, the two
Right.
years at Exeter, then I'll know that it's not going to work, and I'll stay
Right.
with short stories. I finished the course in August 2012. I graduated in January 2013, and I finished the novel in January 2013. So it was quite good, because every time we had an assignment to do, I was using parts of the novel
Sure.
to do it. And there was only one time that didn't work. One of my tutors, Philip Hensher, said, "No, I want you to write something new."
Okay.
And I was not at all impressed with that, because I wanted to work on the novel. But anyway, I wrote something new, and that was a 6,000-word story, which turned out to be Counterfeit, which turned out to be the
First
Jones
the novel.
Sisters thrillers,
Yep.
and gave me a lot of characters that I also use in my cozies. So he was right, although I've never admitted that in public before.
And what happened to the novel that you wrote, or the chunk of it for
Oh,
at the same time?
well, that was Gorgito's Ice Rink, which
So your first novel.
I published in 2014,
Mm.
and in 2015 it was runner-up in Writing Magazine's Self-Published Book of the Year awards.
Brilliant.
So I was quite pleased with that in the end.
Yes. And do you write every day? Did you find that that was literally the start of your journey as
Um,
a serious writer?
It was the start of my journey. I don't write every day. I tend to say rather flippantly, I write in November.
Okay.
Um, I um, have pretty much an annual cycle, in that for the last 10 years, 10 or 11 years, I've been doing NaNoWriMo, the
Yep.
National Novel Writers Month
Yes. I was going to
challenge
ask.
in November.
Yep.
And the cozies which I'm writing at the moment are 45,000 words ish anyway, so they
Mm.
fit nicely into Nano. So
Mm.
I do my first draft in November. I have December off, because there's always far too much going on. I will then edit January through June, probably, with all the various stages of it.
Mm.
Hope to have it finished by July or August, launch it in October, ready for the Christmas market, and
Mm.
start the next one in November.
Mm. So you
So it
average about a
depends.
year,
Yes,
just
I
under a
average a
year.
year.
Yeah.
Yeah, as
Yeah.
opposed to the 8 years that the first one took.
Yeah. Well, you would hope so. Yes.
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 Yeah,
So
I've got a lot better at it now.
do you still write short stories in between?
Um, I I wrote I do occasionally, not half as many as I used to.
Mm.
I've In the last 3 years, in between, in the sort of the middle bit between the cozies,
Mm.
I've been publishing a book of short stories each year. And they are stories that I think it was the first year I did Nano, or sorry, the first year that I completed Nano. Um, it was when I was still back trying to learn how to write a really long piece. And what I did was, instead of writing a novel, I did 25 stories, each of 2,000 words each.
Mm.
And I've had those online for on file for years,
Mm.
and I've never done very much with them. I've done an occasional competition entry, but I've
Mm.
never done very much in that.
Mm.
So what I did when I started writing the cozies, and I had this whole world to develop, was I took each of those short stories and rewrote them in the Coomsford village, using some of the characters that are in the novels.
Mm.
And I use those in my I send out a monthly newsletter to my readers, and I gave them a free short story in each of my newsletters.
Oh, that's a
And
good
then
idea.
at the end of each year, and because for some reason I started doing this in April, my year for this ends in March. I then put out the Coomsford calendar, which
Mm.
is a short book of 12 short stories.
Mm.
And I've done that 3 years in a row, although I probably will give it a rest
Good.
for a while now.
Yeah.
So I write them occasionally, but not not that much, no.
No. But do you enjoy doing both? If you were told you could only write one format, novels or short stories, I'm guessing it would be novels.
It would be novels, yes.
Mm.
Yes. Or it would, yes, but it would be short novels. I have to say I'm much more comfortable with the 45,000 word one than I
Right.
am with the 75,000 word one.
Yeah. So do you write standalones and series? Do you find the process quite different? Because the standalone, your first book, every it's well, it is literally by default the fact that you start at the beginning and end at the end, and that's it. You don't
Yes.
have to remember everything from the first one before you go on. Do you plan this a series up to a certain point, or do you find you
Um,
just get the idea and see how it goes?
I'm starting to plan them now more than I did to begin with.
Mm,
And I have two series, the series of thrillers, which was set from 2004 through, well, originally till 2010, but as you know, there's a new one coming out which brings the story up to date.
mm,
So they really cover 2004 to 2024. The cozies cover 2021 to 2024, and I tend to date everything so we know where it was.
mm.
I've got some of the characters have been carried over from one series to the other. And if I'd known when I started writing the series back in 2013 or whatever it was,
Mm.
that I was still going to be talking about them 20 odd years later, I'd have made my characters younger than I did.
Ah,
Because
yes,
I have three
they
strong
age.
female characters, and I started them off in their early 40s,
Mm,
which means they're now all in their 60s. And although 60 is very much the new 30, so I
absolutely.
believe, um, they're getting to the stage now where they don't want to be kicked around anymore. So
Mm,
I'd have made them. I think I'd have made put them in their 20s, and that would have given me more
mm.
years with them.
Because I guess that's the disadvantage of dating, because some novels aren't dated. They could in theory, and if say you've got just the mention of an iPhone rather than an iPhone 6, you're not dating anything. So you have the
Absolutely.
disadvantage, the fact that but then things happen in the world that date certain books, don't they?
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm,
And
yeah.
I'm always conscious of the fact that because I dated, sometimes I have to think about real world things, and other times I just ignore them.
Mm,
I managed to get around the whole COVID thing by not publishing anything around 2020 at all.
right.
And when I started it, the first cozy was from 2021, and we were
Mm,
just sort of coming out of it. So I was able to refer to it without
of
actually writing about
going
it
in
now.
depth. Yeah,
Yeah.
because we don't want to relive it in fiction, do we? Really?
Not at the moment. I think we will at
No.
some point, but
Mm,
certainly I remember all the conversations we used to have on the writers' networks in 2020, should we
mm,
be writing about this? And the general
mm,
consensus was no.
no,
We all want to escape from it.
exactly. So, do you think you'll stick with the not the darker, but because you've got cozy mystery and thriller with sort of the crime element? Have you gone into any other genres with your short stories? Anything you
Um,
hadn't perhaps expected to go? Say,
well, actually, no, the short stories aren't crime stories. Most of them are sort of what I would call Womag story. I mean, they're a
yes,
mixture. They're a complete mixture.
okay,
There's some poignant, some funny, but they're not crime stories as such. But they're about the characters who are in the crime novels. Whether I would write, I don't think I'd write other genres. Um, I read crime obsessively. I love fantasy, but I've never thought I'd be able to write it. I don't know, maybe one day
mm,
I'll have a
mm,
go at it. But it's so difficult to write fantasy without being derivative.
right.
And
Don't
so
think I could either.
yeah,
Mm,
I read romance occasionally, but not very often. But I couldn't write it. I have occasional love interest bits in the novels, but I wouldn't be. I don't think I could write a full novel in that genre. So no, I think I'm probably going to stay in the crime genre. I've finished with that series of thrillers, very definitely. And I'm continuing with the cozies at the moment. But in the back of my head, I'm thinking, yeah, I'd like to have a go at another series.
New characters.
But also there's a story that's been in my head for a long time, and that's set in Russia. There's a lot of my work was in Russia, and Gogito's Ice Rink was set there, as is some of the thrillers as well. But there are 5 locations in Russia which are linked to the Romanov family. And I've had this thought in my head for a long time that I wanted to do some sort of, a Kate Moss type time slip story, which I guess is on the way to being fantasy, but not the traditional sort. I did actually spend some time before I wrote the cozies trying to work my way through that story, and I thought it was going to be either one person who went round covered all the 5 locations, or different people at different times covering the 5 locations. I couldn't get it to work. I took a year off from writing fiction after the thrillers, and I was doing my non-fiction at the time, to try and get this story planned. And I got so bored with it, and I thought, if I'm bored, then my reader's going to be bored. But at some point, I will go back to that. Whether I do it as short stories or not, I don't know. So I guess, yeah, that there's maybe 1 or 2 other standalones there as well.
See what comes out.
We'll see what comes out. Yeah.
Yes. You mentioned non-fiction because you write non-fiction about writing.
I do. Yes. Well, about being a
business.
writer. Yeah, about the business side. I started off calling them the business of writing. These days I call them author business foundations, because they're about running your business, about the fact that a writer is, unless they're working as a staffer on a newspaper or whatever, they are a small business person. And we all need to understand how to run our own businesses. And a lot of writers I've met think, oh no, I'm not interested in that side of it. I only want to do the creative side. And one of the things that I got, I think, from my industrial years is a belief that you should keep things as simple as possible. And if you've got simple systems for doing things, you can do things quickly, get them out of the way, and then concentrate on what you actually want to do, which is the creative side. So sorry?
No, I was just going to say, because HMRC won't go away. You have to keep track of everything. I have a nerdy Excel spreadsheet, as I often do with most things, which is just literally date, who I bought it from, what it was for, any incoming, outgoing, and then it all auto sums at the bottom, and then it just filters into the totals. And once it's set up for 1 year, I just keep going thereafter.
Absolutely. And it can be as simple as that. And so I started off, I actually did some blog posts back in about 2010, I think it was, something like that. I was blogging and I was doing these posts on simple steps for setting up your business. And then I converted them to workshops, which I did at Swanwick, at the Writers' Summer School in Swanwick a few times. And then somebody said to me, well, why don't you put them into books? So it's a real case of repurposing the material. And I've got a series of 3 about setting up your business, the finance side, how to work more effectively and productively. And then the fourth one in the series is on self-publishing, because
Okay.
I am a passionate self-publisher, and I find that a lot of authors, are looking for help on that. So I wrote that one
Absolutely.
about that.
Just go on Facebook groups, and every day, every time I look, there's somebody, or how do I do this? How do I do that? And also
Yes.
people looking for recommendations for books on how to, exactly as you've said, how to do it. Do you find the more you write, because you would have done your million words before you actually came to fiction writing, that when you've written a first draft, this is sort of a two-part question, because you mentioned earlier on about having written, I think it was 6 chapters, and then you went back and went through it so many times before you could carry on. Do you still do that, or do you sort of do a first draft and then go back after that?
I do the whole lot. I do the first draft. I never edit it during the initial drafting stage.
Mm,
I believe, and I don't worry at all about what garbage it might be. It's, you can edit
mm.
rubbish. You can't edit a blank page.
No, absolutely.
So I
Yeah.
no, I do the whole thing. And if I have a question about something, I'll write something in the middle of the text to remind me that it's
Mm,
missing. That's
mm,
why I never do any research um, in advance. It's only as I'm doing the later drafts that I realize I need to look something up, but
mm.
at the time I don't. Yeah.
And do you ever get stuck? Because you do work on one thing at once, and you find you can actually go from start to finish, or do you? Because some writers, myself included, have two projects on the go. So if we get stuck on one, we can go to another one.
I usually have at least two projects
Because
going
you do
at
yes, two
yes.
series.
I mean, this year has been um, quite difficult. I will never again try and launch two novels in two different series
Mm,
within 6 weeks of each other. That was there were good reasons why I did it, but it's caused a few problems.
right.
But what actually happened was that in the end, the second project got pushed to one side, and I gave the first project more time than I needed.
Mm,
Sorry, more time than I had in order to get it right.
mm,
And then I had to sort of squeeze up the second project,
mm.
but it seems to be working all right.
Good. I suppose the more often you do it, if you've got two a year, and if you make notes, it's easier the second time once you've
Yes,
been through the first one and learned from it.
yeah, absolutely.
Yes. So when you've finished the first draft and go back, do you find there's a lot of editing to do?
Um, it varies actually. I mean, the latest cozy that I've done, because as I said, I was pushed for time.
Mm,
I actually didn't. I did the first draft, and then I sent it straight to my alpha readers. Um, and when I got the feedback from them, then I edited. What I would normally do is do the first draft, go through it once, then send it out either to an editor, as we did with the
mm,
thriller, or
mm,
to my alpha readers. Um, Edit it again, send it to the beta readers, edit it a final time, then
mm,
it goes to the proofreader. But
mm,
again, it's because I'm working in a series, so a lot of the stuff is already there. The world is already um, existing.
mm.
So, well, I'm getting better. I think, the more you do
Practice,
it,
isn't it? Yeah,
good practice,
absolutely.
absolutely. Yes, yeah.
Yes.
I mean, that
Yeah,
first one, Gorgito's Ice Drink, not only did it take me 8 years, but I never throw anything away. And
that's good to
I,
hear.
I'm fairly certain I've got 21 versions of that first manuscript. These days, as I say, I usually work with, I end up with either the third or fourth version being the
Mm,
final one.
mm. And how do you handle feedback? Are you pretty good at, if somebody comes back to you, whether it's an alpha reader, beta reader, proofreader, or when I sent you back the edits, are
Mm.
you, I guess, because having been so experienced of all these writing processes, you're used to having feedback of on your technical writing and
Mm.
editing. But when it's something you've created from scratch and is your baby, effectively, do you find that any different?
Yeah, well, I usually go through the same process, that the process that we have, when we look at our reviews online and we ignore the 55 brilliant ones and concentrate on the one
Right.
bad one.
What did I do
I mean,
wrong?
absolutely.
Yeah.
I when I get the feedback from people, if I send it off to an alpha beta or a beta reader,
Mm,
I will normally say to them, "You've got a month." And people don't need a month. And I will get the feedback coming in bit by bit over the month, and I'll
mm,
have a look at it. But I'll always say to them, "Thanks very much. I'm not going to touch this till the beginning of next month. I'll come back to you if I've got any queries." But I
mm,
read through, and I'll think, "Oh, it's terrible. It's not going to work. I'm going to have to
oh,
rewrite it."
mm,
Um, and I'll put it to one side. But then when I come back and look at, I then take everybody's feedback, and like you, I'm a spreadsheet nerd,
mm,
and I set up a spreadsheet with every single comment that people have made. And some of my beta readers will just send me a paragraph with a couple of points in it.
right.
Um, some of them will send me very detailed lists. Some of them will send me annotated manuscripts.
Mm,
And I collate all those comments together and put them in a spreadsheet, and then classify them against whether they're just a straight grammar point. Because it doesn't matter how many times you say to beta readers, ignore the typos, they'll be
mm.
picked up. They still get picked up by them.
Mm. Well,
Um,
that's good. It's better to have five people pick something,
Absolutely.
and I'm sure it makes a difference if one person says something that nobody else has said, or if you've got five people saying the same thing.
Absolutely, yes, yeah.
Yeah, it's
So
brilliant.
then, so I put it all together, and then I sort it all, and
Mm,
and and go through, and there will be a few things where I'll think, no, they've misunderstood that, so I need to emphasize that point, or I will look at it and say, no, I disagree, and I use the traffic light color coding. So if there's something that's definitely got to be actioned, it goes green. If I need to think about it or do some research, it goes yellow. And if I disagree, it goes red.
right.
And I'll do all of that. And by the time I've done that, then I'll realize actually this isn't as bad as I thought it was. And particularly, you will get some bits where some people will say this is great, and other people will say don't like this.
Yeah.
And if you've got a mixed view, what that's really telling me is not that I've got it wrong, but that maybe I need to communicate it a little better.
Mm. Or it's just not for them in a certain, or they've misunderstood something that somebody else has said is very clear, isn't it?
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you come up with your covers and your titles, or do you throw ideas out to people for those?
The titles I usually come up with them myself. The thrillers, having put an exclamation mark at the end of Counterfeit for the first one, I
Mm,
therefore had to put an exclamation mark at the end of the other three, even though I would never use punctuation in a title again,
mm,
because when you're trying to type it and you type the book title with an exclamation mark at the end, it all word will then start a new sentence, irrespective of whether you want it to or not. So
yes.
I'd never do that again. The cozy titles, I love a bit of alliteration.
Mm.
So I've
I
got
like those, the
murder.
CCs and the DDs and the VVs. Yeah.
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah.
And the one that's coming out in October is, I knew it was about a summer social, so like a village fete.
Mm,
And I had it originally called as Slaughter at the Summer Social. But I knew that wasn't right, because that gives visions of
A
blood
massacre.
everywhere.
Yeah.
And that's not really what Cozy Crime's about.
Mm.
And I was being interviewed by on Palm Radio a while ago, and I talked because they said what's next, and I talked about
Mm.
this, and I said I was looking for a word beginning with S, and the listeners, and it was great because with local radio you never know whether you've got listeners or not. They were
Mm.
sending in answers,
Right.
which the interviewer was telling me as she was getting them coming in. So
Mm.
it is now silenced at the summer
Oh,
social,
oh, I
which
like
is
that.
which is a much calmer,
Mm.
cozier
Mm.
title. So, but
Mm.
the titles, yes, I have help from other people, but those are my own. The
Mm.
covers for my fiction, for my non-fiction, I did the covers myself, although I used a template, so it was using a professional designer's template.
Mm.
But for the fiction, I know roughly what I want, and I brief my designer, who is Bernie Stevens,
Oh,
and
yes, I know Benny.
she will come up with concepts. And because we've worked together for so long,
Mm.
I mean, she's just the thrillers, we've just redesigned the covers, and because they're quite a few years old, I didn't want to go through the whole process of paying for a complete new lot of covers. So what we did was we designed one cover which we've changed the color on
Right.
to give it a brand. The cozies, she knows what I want, and I tell her what's in them, and she comes up
Mm.
with concepts, and we usually get there within about 2 iterations.
Okay.
So we work very well together.
So Retribution is out in less than a fortnight.
Yes, 1st of September.
Yes. And then the Silenced at the summer
Summer social
summer social. That'll
will
be out.
be middle of October-ish, I think.
Okay.
It's usually the week of the 16th, 17th of October, I bring it out.
Mm. Mm.
Um, but there's a bit, because I was behind with it, I need to make sure I've got it right. But there's a bit less pressure than there normally is, because my what I'm doing for my launch party this year, because I've got 2 novels coming out, I'm doing one launch party for both novels, and I'm
Right.
doing that on the 1st of November. So it's got to
Mm.
be out by then.
Okay. And then you start another one. You start again in November.
And then I start again in November, but
Yeah.
only the one cozy this time,
Right.
because I want to. There's a couple of things I need to do next year. One, I need to look at the business books and see if they need updating. Most of what's in those books is because a lot of it is about the questions you need to ask rather than the answers you're going to get.
Mm.
So most of it doesn't need updating, but every 2 or 3 years or so, I need to look at it, because, I mean, last time I did updated them, I think it was 2021. Since then, we've left the EU, and there's
Right.
things in there that I need to change. So
Mm.
that I will want to do at some point early in the year.
Mm.
And the other thing I need to do is get my books all up on Ingram Spark, because at the moment they're all Amazon based.
Mm.
Um, and start the process of going towards audiobooks.
Ooh.
My next next step,
Do you
particularly
have a
with the
narrator in
cozies.
mind, or
No, I haven't started.
just see the?
I'm
Yeah.
I'm going to go down the ACX route, I think,
Right.
first, at least to start with, to see whether they
Mm.
work or not.
Mm.
So I will put it up and see. I think you put it up and you ask people to audition for it. So
Right. Yes.
we'll
See.
see where that
See who
goes.
sounds like your characters. Who you have in mind.
Yeah,
Mm.
it's a difficult one, because I tried it many years ago. I think it was with Gorgito. I tried going down the process, but
Mm.
because there's so many uh non-Brits in that. I mean, mostly Russians, but there were Americans, and there's lots of different accents in there. And
Mm.
I didn't want somebody who was doing all the accents, but it didn't work without any accents at all.
Sure.
Whereas, and the thrillers are the same to a certain extent,
Mm.
but the cozies lend themselves much more to it. So I'm going to try with those and see where
Because
they go.
you'd need a BBC full cast, wouldn't you, with the other ones? Little
Absolutely,
plug. If
yes.
anybody from the BBC is listening, do get in touch. So you'd obviously do it very prolific and do a lot online, a lot of marketing and
Yes.
being self-published. That's, I guess, pretty much down to you. Do you do local events as well? Is your area
I
pretty good?
do. Yes, I do.
Mm.
I in I've done them at different times of the year. The Christmas markets work best. And I do, so I will do this year. I think I'm doing 6 or 8
Okay.
different days of Christmas markets.
Mm.
And they work particularly well, I have to say, with um, because my cozies are set in an imaginary village that's 2 miles up the road from here. It is so much easier to
Nice.
say to people, these books are about this place here,
Mm.
than saying this is a novel set in Russia, or this is a novel set in Africa,
Mm.
or whatever.
Mm.
So the cozies work particularly well with the Christmas markets. I've
Mm.
done a few summer markets. They really don't work. These sort of outdoor events,
Mm.
because people that go to those outdoor events in the summer, they're not really out there to buy stuff for, at Christmas, everyone's looking for Christmas presents.
Yes.
In the summer, they've gone out to watch the regatta or the carnival or whatever it is.
Mm.
And the other thing is they're all eating either ice creams or
Ah,
hamburgers or
yeah.
whatever, and that
Yes.
really doesn't go with a bookstore.
No,
So
absolutely.
so I do bookstores. I find they work better at craft fairs than they do at book fairs,
Mm.
because obviously in a craft fair there's probably only
Less
one or maybe
competition.
two bookstores, yes,
Yeah.
whereas in a book fair obviously there's much more competition.
Mm.
I also do, I'm a speaker for WIU3A Probus,
Mm.
and those are interesting events, and they're very variable. I'll go to one and I'll sell 15 books, maybe, and then I'll go to another one and I might sell one. And
Mm.
it really depends on the different audiences, and but they're good fun. I enjoy them.
They are. I do them. I've only done. Well, Bedford was the later because I've moved to Buckinghamshire,
Mm,
literally just been here over a year. So I've applied and waiting for a yes to do an audition.
mm,
But Bedford is. I'm still a member of Bedford. So and Northamptonshire and Huntingdon, which is too far to go
mm.
now. But yeah, no, I love them because they are there to see you. And yes, the last one I'd had to delay or was delayed because of COVID, and I went to Bedford, which was an hour and a half round trip, and I sold one book, so that was a bit disheartening. But they were lovely. But it was after an AGM, and I think they were tired, and yes, but they're such lovely ladies, so no, it's definitely worth doing.
And I find that after an event, very often there will be a spike,
Mm,
either in sales or page reads on
mm,
Amazon. And I get people who come up to me and say, that was really interesting, but I'm afraid I don't buy real books these days. And I'll say,
no,
that's fine.
yeah,
Here's
yeah.
the link. Find me on Amazon.
Yes, exactly. No, I'm the same. I think I don't know whether your reading has changed since you've been writing fiction, but being an editor, my it has. It sounds dramatic to say my it killed my love of reading because that's not true.
Yeah,
But I
yeah.
get partway through a novel and I just go, "Mm, no, that wouldn't happen." Or you said he was 22 in chapter 4, and 3 years later he's 30 and always sort of picking up things. Do you find you get to a certain point in a book and that's it, you can't go any further because
Yes, yes. I can usually do it quite quickly. If it's a very badly edited book, I don't get past the first few pages.
Right.
And I leave it. It does change your reading very much.
Mm.
I've been a member of a couple of different book clubs over the years, and I always find my view on something is different from the readers. And I
From
will
a
say,
reader.
did this occur to you? And they'll say, oh no, we never noticed.
Mm.
It's yeah, we did one of the books we did was I think it was the Midwich Cuckoos. It was one of the John Wyndham books, and in the middle of one of the early chapters, there is a big chunk on one of the pages, which everything else is in third person, past,
Mm-hmm.
and it went to present tense
Mm.
for absolutely no reason. And I'm
Oh,
convinced. I mean, that's a very old book, and I'm convinced that it was just an editorial, either they
oversight.
changed it or whatever, and they'd missed it. And I
Mm.
sort of said this at the in the book club, and
Mm.
everybody else looked at me and saying, "What are you talking about?" And it had just gone completely over
Yeah.
their heads.
Yeah.
So yes, it does change what
Mm.
you do, and I find that I do pick up on, perhaps not as much as you, because I'm not an editor, and
Mm.
I do pick some things up, and I think, no, that's it's rubbish. I actually find it's affecting more the way I watch things on television.
Oh, right.
I'll sort of be screaming at the television. That's an information dump. We don't
Yes.
need that. That person knows that.
Exposition.
So why are they talking to
Yes. Oh, can you remind me again what we're doing tomorrow, or what her name was? Or
Yeah.
yes,
And
yes,
as you
just for the
know, the
reader.
method for doing this is, well, if
Yes.
they know, why are you
Yes. Were you
talking?
telling them exactly? Yes. So you're involved in a local literary festival. How did, I mean, obviously, I was going to say, how did that come about? But you are there and you are a writer, so
Yes, well, I have been in a number of ones over the years. I was a founder member of Chudleigh Writers, and we started Chudleigh Writers back in 2010, I think it was. And I went to Dartington, which is that was a very big literary festival at the time,
mm,
that's just down the road from us. And I went there the year we started Chudleigh Writers, and they were celebrating their 20th anniversary or something like that. And I was thinking, oh, wouldn't it be nice if we could do that? So
mm,
we started in 2011. We had the Chudleigh Literary Festival, and we ran it through until about, I think we did ran it to 2018. Um, we certainly wouldn't have done it in 2020 because of COVID, but I've an
yes.
idea we stopped the year before.
Mm,
And around that time, I became involved with the Exeter Literary Festival, and I was on the organising committee for that for 2018 and 2019.
mm.
And then I became the director of the festival in 2020, which was a very easy year because we didn't have a
Nothing
festival.
happened. Yeah.
Um, but we had one in November 2021, and there was still a bit sort of, are we doing the right thing? Have we got enough ventilation? Is
Mm,
everyone going to wear
mm,
masks? But we did it,
mm,
and it was great, and people were very happy, I think, to get out
yeah.
and take part. That, but I stepped down after that because it was it was almost a full-time job being the
Mm,
director of a literary festival, and that was
mm,
only a festival that took place over three days.
mm.
So it is a huge job, and for the last couple of years, I've been a member of the South Hams Authors Network, and we have a literary festival which is in October this year.
Mm.
So what I tend to do is I get involved in small ones, and I will be on a panel, or I mean, at the South Hams one, we're having a writer's advice drop-in session. So I will
Mm.
have a stall there, and we'll be talking about self-publishing and that. Um, we have through the Crime Writers Association, we have a day in Torquay in November, which is Crime at the Coast. and that's a
Nice.
one-day event, which is a mixture. It's for writers and readers, and we talk
Mm,
about all aspects of crime writing,
mm,
and that's a great fun. So I will take part in festivals if I get the opportunity, but I'm not organising any at the moment
mm.
because it's too much work.
Yes, I was on a committee of one near to here, so I travelled down for it, and in the end, and family commitments, I just couldn't keep going. So I do panels. I'm there when they need me, which is lovely. So yes, very very wise decision. So when
What I,
you're
what but what I am involved in is the Women in Publishing Summit, and
mm,
that's a women writers community um, based in the States. So it's all done online, and I've been a speaker at their summit every year since 2020. I've done it for 4 years so far,
mm,
and I've just pitched for a slot for next year, and that one's great fun. That's it's a 4-day event.
mm,
And because it's run out of the States, from my point of view, it starts at 2 o'clock in the afternoon and goes through
mm,
till 10 or 11 and 12 at night.
mm,
And the happy hour that we have afterwards, I'm still there at 2 o'clock in the morning. You know, I'm saying to them, I'm the one in my PJs.
yep, yep,
Um, but it's just such a great community that it's good
mm,
fun to do.
mm. And we're both members of Ally, the
Yes,
Alliance of Independent Publishers. Um, oh, yes, I should know what it stands
authors,
for. Author,
yeah,
yes.
Alliance of Independent Authors.
That's it. Yes. No, I say publishers. Um, so and they have I think it's September. They have a 2 day, 2 day, 3 day. I again, due to family commitments, I
Mm.
backed out for a couple of years, and I've just rejoined. So getting back into it. So,
Yes, I have to say I didn't do anything with the I wasn't a member for a couple of years, and I rejoined
mm,
last year, I think it was.
mm,
So I haven't seen their but that's an online conference.
it is, yes, yes,
And again, that's I think it's 24 hours, but it's just that
right.
because you get longer, because you're not going to sit and watch it over the 24 hours, so
Mm,
you get longer to you. They're all recorded, so you
mm,
can play
mm,
them afterwards.
mm,
Yeah, but there's some very good advice comes out of
mm.
those, and the ally guides are very very useful.
There's nothing quite like it, is there? The writing fraternity and publishing industry. We're uh, we're there for each other. I
Absolutely.
was very early days back in 2005, 2006 when I started. It was first festival I went to. I was just so pleasantly surprised that even big names are just, they'll always spend time. If you ask them a question, they'll spend time helping you and chatting with
Absolutely.
you, and it's
Yeah.
fabulous.
In fact, because I was starting around the same time as you, and I didn't, it's going to sound odd now, but I didn't actually realize that writing as a thing and as a community actually existed. The idea that there were networks and there were people working together, and that
Mm,
was a complete surprise to me.
mm,
Um, and up until this year, I've always, and I've been involved in all sorts of networks and that, as you have.
mm,
Um, but they've always been general. So I've been to Swanwick, to the Writers' Summer School, there's Women in
mm,
Publishing there. All these things, they've cross genre. This year, I've started focusing in, and I've joined the crime. A couple of years back, I joined the Crime Writers Association, and I went to their conference, which was fascinating. And that was there were about 40 of us there, and it was a 2-day event, and there was sort of various not workshops, more just presentations really.
mm.
And then the month after that, I went to Crime Fest in Bristol,
Bristol.
which is where there are, I think there were about 300, and from the very top down to very new aspiring
Mm,
authors. Plus,
mm,
there were readers in that was a mixed one, whereas Crime Writers Association is just writers. Crime
yeah,
Fest was a mixture.
yeah.
But it was I found that really quite daunting. It was like the first time I went to Swanwick back in 2006, because I
Mm,
walked in the door and everybody seemed to know everybody else, and I knew nobody.
yeah.
And I did, after a while, obviously there were
Yes,
people
you get
there
used to.
I knew, yes.
Yeah.
But it's again, it's very close knit, and there were some very big names there who were very happy to chat, and we're talking to
Mm,
people in the bar
mm.
and in the lift and that.
That's
Um,
where it all happens, in the bar.
Absolutely, yes. And before I left on that Sunday, I was feeling much more relaxed, and I'd already
Mm,
paid for next year. So
yeah,
yeah, I'm working on the crime fraternity at the
right.
moment, the crime
Well,
writing fraternity.
because I lived further north, I did Harrogate, I think 5 or 6 years in a row, and that's
Right.
exactly the same thing. Everybody knows everybody, with a
Yes.
core of familiar faces, and everybody chats to everybody. Nobody, you see somebody standing in a corner, they're not standing in a corner for very long. Somebody will
Yeah.
go up to them and chat to them. It's brilliant.
Yeah.
No,
I've
no
heard,
other
is
industry I don't
Harrogate
think quite like it.
is Harrogate, it's very big though, isn't it? It's the biggest
Uh,
one of the lot, isn't it?
well, in theory, but I don't think it's any bigger than Crime Fest. It's
Okay.
about 300 or 400 people there. Yes, it's all in one hotel. So
Mm,
it's in the Old Swan, and then they have the talks in the ballroom that
hmm.
Agatha Christie has a blue plaque in the
Yeah.
ballroom, and so they have that
Okay.
there. So yes, it's not massive. It's I think Crime Fest, I believe, is spread out along the high street. It has different venues along the high street.
No,
Um,
no. The
oh, is that
Bristol
one as
one,
well?
that was all in the same one. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Because I think
Yeah.
I think back in the many years ago, maybe it was
Oh,
they had
okay.
them
Then
different
you should
different
spread it.
venues,
Mm,
which I guess didn't work if now they've got one main
yeah.
venue for it. So anyway, I'm yet to go, but now I'm an hour and a half further south. I'm
Yeah.
hopeful that I'll, if it's not too late, that I'll go next year.
Yeah. No, I think there's still plenty of tickets left. So
Yeah. Anyway, it's been an absolute pleasure chatting with you. We could keep going.
we could,
Maybe
yes.
have a part two, but we will be back, hopefully October onwards, and start at the very beginning with your
Mhm.
books and do a live Q&A with an audience,
Yeah,
and
look forward to that.
pick the first book and repeat thereafter, rinse and repeat, as the
Okay.
saying goes. Anyway, thank you so much for spending this afternoon with me.
Thank you for asking me.